Welcome to this important high-level political forum virtual gathering under the auspices of the United Nations Economic and Social Council. This year marks a significant milestone, the 10th anniversary of the adoption of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. My name is Ruth Wilkinson, and I'm the Head of Policy and Public Affairs at the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health. I'm delighted that IOSH is bringing this session to you, and I'm delighted to be moderating the session and for inviting some distinguished speakers with us today. So as we reflect on a decade of progress and persistent challenges, we come together at this pivotal moment. Around the world, countries are navigating the complex intersections of ongoing conflicts, economic uncertainty, and the escalating climate crisis. In this context, our focus today is on decent work and occupational safety and health, so it's more urgent than ever. These are not only fundamental principles and rights at work, they are also essential pillars for sustainable development, social justice, and resilient economies. So let us use this platform to reaffirm our shared commitment, exchange innovative solutions, and accelerate action to ensure that every worker, everywhere, can enjoy safe, dignified, healthy, and productive employment. So I'd like to introduce and also thank all speakers for joining me on this session. Everybody's joining from different locations around the globe and on different time zones, and their insights and their perspectives will be valuable to me. So I'd like to introduce, if you could just put on the next slide, please, Amir. I would obviously, first of all, like to introduce Megan Galvin, who is the Manager of Labour, Rights and Decent Work with the United Nations Global Compact. I'd also like to welcome as a panellist Professor Song-Yu Kang, who is the President of the International Commission on Occupational Health, referred to as ICO. And I'd also like to introduce Anna Holtkamp, who is a board member of the European Youth Forum. We're also expecting a speaker, so Miss Ana Carrera de la Cruz from the IALI, who is the Secretary General from the International Association of Labour Inspection. And if Anna doesn't join us, her colleague might join us in a place. So we're just waiting on another speaker, but I will start and I'll introduce the IALI speaker when they join us. But I'd just like to thank Megan, Seong and Anna for joining me at this stage. Next slide, please. So we've got for this session, we've got an hour, which will go really, really quickly. We've got the agenda set up to hear the thoughts from all of our speakers on these two key questions. So one about policy gaps and imbalances, but then also, because this is about driving action, we want to talk about and explore those innovative solutions. What can be done? How can we take this forward? But what I will also do at the end is I'll do a few closing reflections. I'll ask my speakers to also give their final remarks. But if you do have a question that you would like to raise, please do put your hand up towards the end of the session or write it in the chat, and I'll make sure that I do pose that question at the end. Can I just ask that as the speakers will be going through, can you please keep your microphones on mute and obviously use that raised hand feature at the end, and I will come your way. I also just want to flag that this meeting will be recorded and it will be made available in a few days from now as well. So my thanks to all of you for joining us at this session. So I will move swiftly. Now the introductions have been made to the first question, and I would like to bring the different perspectives in of each speaker. So I'll be coming to each of you in turn. So this is obviously all about SDG 8, decent work, economic growth. We're seeing that they could have a bit more action and going on to support the SDGs here. So I'd really like to just pose that first question to all speakers is, what do you think the policy gaps and the imbalances are? So what is blocking decent work at the moment? Professor Song, shall I come your way first, please? And I'll open the floor for you.
Dear Rose, thank you very much for introducing me. And my name is Song-Yu Kang. I'm the president of International Commission on Occupational Health, ICO, founded in 1906 in the longest and the largest international professional society. And my view about the policy gap for imbalance in OSH is the economic development status in each country and the social security system in each country. So when I was young, first of all, most of the audience probably safety professionals, I guess. And the safety, you are more focused on injuries, and then I'm working for the health field. But in health field and the environment and health of the workers is quite vague. We always try to looking at the relationship between work and the health, the person's health. It is quite different from the country and the country. So when I classified in this status in this three phase, and the phase one is the external environment. When we started in economic development, and then we used lots of the different chemicals and the dust and the biological hazard, and it comes to the developed in some kind of the toxic disease or pneumoconiosis or something noise induced hearing loss. At that time, it is simple. If we remove the external cause and by the major engineering control, we can control the occupational diseases or occupational health status. However, even if we remove the external environment, we are still facing different kind of the health condition caused by the lifestyle disease or some mental disease, musculoskeletal disease. It could be naturally developed, but it can be aggravated or triggered by the work condition, work environment. So at that time, even if we remove the improved work environment, we still workers face the suffered from different health problems. And so the last stage is as I told you that occupational disease is very different from time to time and time to time. So some kind of the disease is very rare, and some kind of the environmental issue is very, very rare. So it is very difficult to prove for relationship in that case, especially in very rare disease or like a cancer. It's quite difficult to define the relationship. So in that case, if we have the good social security system, we probably have the better solution. But many of the countries don't have the good social security system. They have just basic healthcare system or some basic pension. But the social security still lack. So we should understand this kind of different situation of the economic development and the social security system. Otherwise, when we say occupational health, we usually see the different view. We look at the different side. So in mostly high-income countries, especially European country, is well developed, and then you haven't seen any classical or toxicological occupational diseases. And then now you are talking about some mental health issue, but in the lots of the countries or some the areas, they still suffer from occupational condition caused by the external agent like chemicals and the dust. Also, some countries developed a lot of the lifestyle diseases, and then that cannot be improved by the simple traditional way of the occupational health. For example, if we're sitting for a long time, as our job is usually sitting at the chair, it can decrease our physical activities, and then it increases our body weight, is eventually increase some cardiovascular diseases. So it is proven by ILO WHO joint work. And if we work in the long hours and our cardiovascular disease increased by 35%, something like that. So the main obstacle for occupational safety and health at this moment is the economic development status in each country and the social security system. This is my view about in the first questions.
Thank you ever so much, Professor Seong, for mentioning that the bringing in the health, the disease, the social security aspects to that conversation, because it's important to recognise the barriers that are in existence there for decent work at the moment. I'm also delighted just to say that our speaker, the Secretary General from the International Association of Labour Inspection, Ana Carrera de la Cruz, has also joined us. So thank you ever so much, Anna, for joining us. And on that note, I'm not wanting to put you on the spot, but I will come your way as I've just introduced you, as it seems to make sense. We're exploring the first of the two questions that we're going to do, which is looking at the policy gaps and the imbalances. So what do you think from your perspective is blocking the decent work agenda at the moment?
Hello, hello afternoon. It's a great pleasure for us to be here. I'm so sorry that I got delayed. I was just flying to Madrid and our flight got delayed. So I'm just in Hong Kong and I will be traveling to Madrid tonight. So sorry for the delay in 5 minutes today. So, and also thank you so much for the invitation. It's a great honor for us to be here to collaborate with OSH. We have collaborated with you along these years and mostly during the last week in Osaka, which was a great pleasure for us to participate in your workshops, and also with ICO, with United Nations, and with the young people as they are the future. So it's a great pleasure to be here. So today, as we are talking about OSH, is a fundamental principle, and in Osaka we were speaking about that it's not a priority. It must be considered as a value, because sometimes when it's a priority, it might be today but not tomorrow. So we have to stay focused and stay on the rule that the OSH is a fundamental principle. It has to be taken care. And if you ask me why it's not guarantee decent work to all, I think ILO has been working so much and so lately in recent years speaking about decent work, because we cannot expect a future of a company, of a country, if the work is not decent, if the work is not with the standards of compliance, with all the labor law. So what we see from IALI, why this decent work is not achieving, and why this objective of the Agenda 2030 is not being complete, maybe it's because several factors. The first of all will be the informal economy. There's a lot of people working in the informal economy, which they suffer, and they are the most vulnerable workers. People who are leaving behind their country, thinking that they're going to find a new place to raise their children, to look for a better future. What they find out is a complete nightmare, because their labor conditions are not respected. They do not know what are the legislation. They might suffer from the language, they might suffer from the economy needs, and also because they feel isolated or they are afraid of complaining because they think that they might get away. So that's one of the main reasons that we do not get a decent work, because we have a lot of vulnerable workers. We have to take in mind that equally is not being applied. Of course, we have to think positive, because we have done so much so far. So we have been working so much to attain all these goals. But sadly, gender, it's not being equally applied to all people, and mostly not only in the labor condition, but also in OSH, because it had to be adequate for the women, because the OSH equipment and measure has to be different between women and men. Of course, we have to take in mind also several hazards, like the climate change, like new hazards might come into place, as we have seen this year that is getting so hot, and that you made a report saying that up to 2 billion workers, 71 of the working population, are exposed to acid heat. That means more out of 10 workers. And if you ask me another question, another problem of the decent work is might be there is not enough social protection. So we cannot expect for a country or a company, if they do not give the social protection, how are they going to take care about the OSH issues when they do not do the first step? That is the social protection. So therefore, the social protection has to come in the first place. And I think all the OSH professionals, as the IOSH, United Nations, young people, and the IALI, the labor inspection, we have a key role to be played, because you need to be in the field, you need to control, you need to also to collaborate. And that's why for us, is Vision Zero such an important issue, because it's not only to enforce the law, but also to help the countries and workers so they can know their rights. Because one of the things we have seen, and during the Osaka conference we saw it, is that sometimes the lack of training, the lack of knowledge from the workers make them suffer and make them condemned for no future. So altogether, that will be all the problems we have to face. But I would like to speak in a positive way, because we have done so much so far, and I think there is a lot to do. But if we do it all together, we can do it. I wrote yesterday that if you want to go faster, just go alone. But if you want to accomplish and to make the goal, let's work together. So I think that's the key, that we have to collaborate and work together. Thanks so much.
Lovely. Thank you ever so much. And especially as you're zooming in halfway through your travel and safe onward journey to Madrid afterwards. And already we're getting some synergies there about that social security, those social protections, and this representative need to protect all workers. And you acknowledged, Anna, some of the vulnerable groups in there, women as well. On that note, I'm going to go across to Anna, who's from the youth forum, because I'm really interested to hear the views from that youth perspective. So could I pose the same question your way from your lens and members and the youth community that you're representing, please, Anna? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, indeed, I'm from the European Youth Forum, so my perspective will be very much from the youth in Europe. I did really much like the notion of decent work being a value. So on that note, I think it's very important to define decent work before we talk about it. At the European Youth Forum, we see decent work as more than just fair pay, though that is a very critical starting point. Unfortunately, even that is not really guaranteed. Nowadays, today, 44% of young people in Europe struggle to make ends meet, and 13% experience in-work poverty. But decent work goes beyond wages. It means stability and predictability, knowing your schedule, having a say in your workplace, and knowing how much you will earn and when. Yet too many young people are stuck in unstable jobs that leave them anxious and uncertain, with serious impact on mental health. Decent work also means having a voice. Young workers need the ability to raise concerns, shape decisions, organize collectively, whether through unions or democratic structures. So what is really blocking decent work? From our perspective, there are two key trends that need to be addressed to make a difference. First of all, many young people are in insecure jobs where flexibility really only benefits the employer. We call this a one-way flexibility, the idea that young people should be readily available for employers to work at any moment's notice. It is really rooted in this cultural dogma that it's okay to exploit young people. And the lack of experience, knowledge of the rights, avenues for speaking up often leads to young people having to accept poor conditions. And without any culture of collective decision-making in these jobs, they're often left isolated. And secondly, we also see that young people are overrepresented in jobs without strong union culture and membership. And this isolates young workers and limits their ability to improve conditions or even raise mutual concerns and aspirations that they might share with other colleagues. If this is not addressed, it's difficult to see how the situation will change and how decent work will become the norm.
Again, you've raised some really important points that we need to acknowledge here. So first of all, what is that decent work? Obviously, from the Institution of Occupational Safety and Health, we sort of want to acknowledge the role of good occupational safety and health within that decent work agenda. But you're right, what you mentioned, Anna, there is some of the the impacts will have health and safety impacts. You know, if you're in insecure work, if you've got mental health impacts, so it can all have a impact on those individual workers. So thank you for those reflections. And it is last but not least, because I thought, Megan, you would probably have a nice overall perspective coming from the United Nations Global Compact and the different guidance and tools that you have. So if you don't mind, I'd like to pass the floor over to you now with the same question from your perspective, please.
Thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you everyone from IOSH for the opportunity to speak on this important topic. I'm calling in from New York, and here it's also the high-level political forum where SDG 8 is under review, so it's a very timely and important discussion. Ruth briefly introduced me, but I'm Megan Galvin. I'm the Manager of Labor Rights and Decent Work at the UN Global Compact, and for those who are unfamiliar with the UN Global Compact, it's the world's largest corporate sustainability initiative. We have over 20,000 participating companies who have committed to advancing sustainability in line with our 10 principles, which cover the topics of human rights, labor rights, environmental sustainability, and anti-corruption. And so I really focus on our labor principles, and those are derived from the ILO's fundamental principles and rights at work. So although occupational safety and health isn't an explicit labor principle, we do treat it like a labor principle here at the Global Compact. And as we work with companies to advancing the SDGs and our 10 principles, we do see several persistent barriers that are slowing progress towards SDG 8 and the realization of decent work for all. These include, first, there is a gap between policy and practice. While many companies have committed to upholding labor standards, implementation, especially across global supply chains, can remain inconsistent, particularly in high-risk sectors and regions. As part of the Global Compact, all participating companies have to report on an annual basis in order to keep their membership at the Global Compact. And we recently launched a new questionnaire asking for companies to report back on their progress across the 10 Global Compact principles, including on occupational safety and health. And through this reporting, we see that 88% of companies of the Global Compact have a publicly stated commitment on labor rights and decent work, and actually safe and healthy working environments has the highest percentage of policy commitments across all topics that we ask on. However, only 74% have a due diligence process in place to take progress across this commitment that they have. So there definitely is a need to move from commitment to action. Second, we also see from our companies that there can be limited capacity and resources, especially among SMEs, which make up over half of the UN Global Compact participating companies. There's definitely a need for more support to embed responsible labor practices into core business operations. So there really is also then the need to further emphasize the business case for these different sustainability practices, to embed it within all departments. There is a financial reason, there's a human resource reason, there's a procurement reason, etc. And then the third point I wanted to make that we see is a major barrier to progress on decent work in SDG 8 is rising inequalities, and especially like Anna mentioned, fair pay and wages is a really big topic, and especially wage inequality is another big barrier that we see to the realization of decent work. And this also, of course, affects occupational safety and health, because when workers don't earn enough to cover basic needs, then they may feel forced to take risks on the job or work too many hours. So paying a livable wage then helps create a safer, more stable workplace where people can focus on their health and well-being. And we've recently launched an initiative where companies can sign up to different targets to commit to paying living wages in their own operations or in their supply chains. And we've had over 750 companies who have signed up to one of these two targets. So that really shows that companies are wanting to take action to tackle these barriers to realizing decent work and all these other topics that are then interrelated within SDG 8. So these are some of the 3 key barriers that we see that are needed to tackle to make progress across SDG 8. But I also really did like how Anna ended her remarks, that there is some good news too. There are really good resources out there, and there are good partners to go together on this journey. I can drop some links to some of our resources that I've mentioned too in the chat to help you get started on tackling these barriers.
Lovely, thank you. Megan. And I think you've linked me up for the next one really when you've said there's like that's the commitment, but how do we move from that commitment to the action? And you've obviously sort of brought it into that business lens, the employer's lens. What's going on in that landscape? Are we committing? We're not taking that action. And I think Anna, from the IALI's perspective, when he talked about that informality, and we know not everybody's been, how do we support that transition to formality so that we can support individuals to get that decent work? Otherwise, we're seeing there's a lot of government level, national level action that can happen here as well as at that business level, but considering all those different groups involved. So thinking about getting to action then sort of brings me to the second question. And I suppose just for everybody who is listening in, I will pose the question to all speakers. I'll probably go the same order again, so please expect it to sort of flow in that same way. But once we've done this second question, if you do have a question for one of the panelists, please put your hand up towards the end of this part, and then I will come your way before getting final thoughts. So the question then is about exploring innovative practices for promoting decent work. We've talked about some of the barriers, and we know this is all about actually, we know what some of these barriers are. The important thing now is how can we help to push forward the SDGs, particularly SDG 8. As you mentioned, it is a focus area of the high-level political forum at the moment that is happening. So what strategies can be put in place to respect, promote and realise the fundamental principle and right at work of a safe and healthy working environment? So that fundamental principle was recognised in 2022. So under that decent work agenda, as part of that fundamental principle, what can we do? So Professor Seong, I'll come your way first, please, for your views and reflections from your health perspective. Thank you.
ICO is not the government, is not the executive organization, it's the association, professional association. So what we can do to enhance the communication among members and professionals. That's why we have the group members and then individual members. Individual members covers all over the world, and then group members, we have the two types. One is the of sustaining members, covers mostly public and national Institute of Occupational Health, Safety and Health, and then affiliate members covers for professional association, society in each countries. So through the membership, we have the 37 different scientific committees, which covered in the different area. I divide in this 37, and based on their focus, one is scientific committee focus on the hazard, like the dust or chemicals, noise, something like that. And then the other one is the scientific committee focus on organ system, like cardiovascular, cardiology, respiratory, dermatology, like that. The other one is disciplines. We have the multiple discipline: occupational medicine, industrial hygiene, occupational nursing. So we have the diverse discipline. Also, we have the sector basis, construction or healthcare workers. They are something different from other area. And then finally, we have the system-based scientific committee, which covers for the unemployment issue. We all know that economy affect the health outcome, or the woman health, or the like that. We have such kind of the basis. So this is our strategy. And ICO has the triennial the Congress, bringing all together every 3 years since its establishment in 1906. So the last one, the 34th in the International Congress, and the next one will be 35 Congress in 2027 in Mumbai. Also, each scientific committee, they own the conference. It's gathering around 100 to 300 participants. They're all the experts, and they exchange what is the new idea. And then through these activities, we gathering new idea. One example is ICO statement on migrant workers. So we all know about in the Qatar, the World Cup 2020 stories. There's a lot of the foreign workers died of the heat stroke, but most of them didn't die at the workplace. They died at the dormitory, residential area. So the migrant workers for the residential area is not their home. It's different from their home. So it is a kind of second workplaces. So our the statement of migrant workers emphasize the importance of the residential condition of migrant workers. So this is just gathering all the different sectors information put together, and then we made a statement. This is our strategy. We continue that, and then we work in each other, and then work, coming together, and then bringing issue, and then we'll make the boys to improve the workers' health in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Seong. And I think you're right, actually, it's reflecting on the role that we can all play from our own institutions and organisations, and what's within our remit where we can advocate and influence and support those agendas. And thanks for raising migrant workers as well as one of those vulnerable groups that we need to support. I will pass across to Anna from IALI with the same question, really. So those innovative practices and strategies that we can do to help drive this agenda forward from your perspective, please.
Okay, thank you so much. So we are seeing that working of life is changing so quickly, and we are facing new challenges. As for instance, our professional was saying about informal work, new technology which has made our work easier, but can deal also with mental health. So we have to take care of those issues. Of course, self-employment, but false self-employment when they make so vulnerable workers, as for instance with the digital platforms, and also with remote work. After the pandemic, there was a lot of people working at home, but that can be also a little bit risky, not only by the ergonomic issues, but also by the informal economy, and also by the mental health. So, and of course by the climate change, because as we spoke before, there's a lot of others, and people are dying if their temperature is higher than 40 degrees. So our key and recommendation will be as follows. The first of all, the collaboration is a key for us between all the stakeholders, between all the countries, and between all the professionals. We have a play to be role as, for instance, trade unions, us professionals, workers. And regarding the workers, our second recommendation will be to increase the training, because if the workers, they do not know which legislation might be applied, how are they going to fight for them? How are they going to fight if they think they're going to take out of the country? So they suffer for vulnerability, and there's where the OSH professionals and labor inspectors, of course, we have to be there to work with them. So our third recommendation will be strengthen the labor system with more resources, and therefore, as we have a program in mind, which is IBOR, and we help another countries to get a better input and a better way of the labor inspection, seeing what are their issues, what are their priorities, what are their problems, so we can help them to improve their labor inspection. And of course, as Megan was already saying, it's very important that we speak from the commitment to the action. It's not only what we read and what we think and what we wish and what we dream, but also how we are going to take in place. And that's why it's a very important question which you have already asked. And as Anna was talking about, we need to guarantee a future for the young people. And if the young people doesn't have fair wages, if they do not have stability, as for instance fixed jobs, how are they going to ask for a house to buy? How are they going to ask for better conditions if they might get fired? So that is one of the key issues that we have seen so far from the IALI, from the labor inspector, that is if the labor conditions are not good enough, there might be a huge probability of suffering, not only for bad conditions, but also from OSH and from accidents, because we have seen so far that if the workers do not rest enough, if they are nervous issues because they might have their job fired, they will not complain about these issues, and they might do some risky action which they did not have to do it because their life is in danger, and all the workers have the right to return safe home. So the first and the main important issue is that we have to play fair game, and everybody has to play with the same rules, because otherwise, and if we were playing football, everybody will understand that there has to be the same rules for everybody, and for that means for every country, every company, and they cannot have a bad labor condition to obtain a profit, or so a product will be costing less. So that is something we have to take in mind. And therefore, I think the key issue is that investing in OSH is not a wasting money. It's guaranteeing the future. If you invest in OSH, the workers will be happier. You won't have people going on leave, and you will have a better future because workers will be commitment. And if they are commitment, the company will have a future, and the country will have a future. And of course, in the collaboration, and it's very important to take in mind the supply chain, where we have seen that there is a lot of vulnerability, mostly when the project has been done in another country, which the labor conditions are not as good as it should be. So in the supply chains, all the companies who are in these supply chains, they have to control that the labor law, that the OSH duties and the OSH values and the standards are being applied. So everybody has a responsibility, everybody has a key, and everybody has a job. And if we take that in mind, we will go further. Thank you so much.
So many key points in there. It'd be unfair of me just to pull a few out, but we need to look at all workers, don't we? We've got from that, and the investment of OSH. So it's not a cost, but there is an investment where you can get that return on investment from that employer perspective. So I will follow through our same order. So thank you, Anna, from the IALI perspective, and I'll bring in Anna from the European Youth Forum's perspective now as well, because you mentioned last time some of that insecure work, the type of works, the impacts are happening to the younger workforce. So what can we do to sort of innovate and change, put some strategies here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that. And as Anna already said before me, I think there's a lot of risk that come from poor working conditions that also apply to. So we see three main terms that we need for decent work to have good working conditions and better health for all workers, especially in the perspective from young European workers. And the ingredients to support decent work are really not that much rocket science. And decent work exists for some cohorts of the population. And many of the things that make decent work decent were also once regarded the norm. So there's no reason why they can't be the norm again. Let me explain that. It involves a number of crucial practices. First of all, we need a new system of workers' rights that is no longer just for the privileged segments of the labor market, or based on age or contractual status or earnings, so really universal rights. This means that we should extend the same rights and benefits for all throughout working lives from the first day on the job. Also, the idea of unpaid internships, for example, is one of many consequences stemming from this double standard that we have when it comes to rights at work. Second of all, we need to afford people better control of their working time. For young people, this means an end to 0-hour contracts, back-to-back temporary employment contracts, and premium pay for contracts that require people to be flexible. Permanent contracts should really be the rule rather than the exception, and young people should have the right to request regular working hours. Third of all, we need to increase the amount of democratic input young people have in the world of work. Democratic participation in politics is largely held as a goal across Europe, and the same ambition should be applied to the world of work. This is not really an easy task because there's quite a lot of anti-union effects, employment models that alienate and isolate workers. So it's no wonder that many young people are unaware of the right at work. But with these three components, we see key to achieving decent work, which are new system of rights of workers that does not include, based on age or contractual status, measures that give young people more control over their working time and greater democratic participation. Additionally to that, another core element of decent work is to feel safe and never be exposed to conditions that compromise your health or safety at work. At the European Youth Forum, we believe that a right to safe and healthy working environment and must go beyond physical safety. Increasingly, young workers face serious psychological risks, stress, burnout, harassment, or other threats to mental health. Alarmingly, nearly 45% of workers now report being exposed to these risks, which is nearly double the amount of the rate in 2007. The rise of psychological harm is directly linked to profound changes in the world of work. The spread of precarious employment, marked by insecurity, poor working conditions, lack of protection, hits young people the hardest. Despite this, legislation at national or EU level has not really kept up to pace. At EU level, for instance, the Framework Directive of Occupational Health and Safety requires member states to protect workers. It does not, however, mark any specific reference to psychological risks. Without this, the existing legal frameworks fail to address real and rising dangers facing young workers in new forms of employment, like platform work or gig work. That's why we call for new EU-level legislation that explicitly recognizes psychological risks and establishes minimum standards for mental health protection in all forms of work, equal recognition of mental and physical health and occupational health and safety rules to ensure that mental well-being is no longer treated as secondary or optional. And last but not least, a targeted protection for young workers who are overrepresented in precarious work by mandating mental health risk assessments and proactive employer responsibility in these high-risk sectors. So these are really our calls to the solution to make decent work with real working rights and health and safety for everyone.
Thank you, Anna. Some clear, concise calls to action there. And thank you for particularly raising the psychosocial risks aspect as well from that regulatory framework perspective. Please forgive me for doing a bit of a plug for IOSH as well as we've also got a white paper that's out on gig and platform workers. So with some calls to action there, highlighting some of the areas that you've mentioned. And likewise, Anna, from IALI's perspective, as you were mentioning climate change and some of those other new emerging risks, we've also got a new white paper on The Heat is On, it's titled, where it's focusing on the health and safety impacts from climate change. So I think and going back to Professor Song's reference, we've all got different information, guidance and tools that's out there. So I do encourage people who are listening in now or listening in later on the record to go and have a look at those, and we'll do some signposts as well. So that was a really important view from young workers. Megan, I will come across to you again to provide that sort of overview from that business perspective and the United Nations Global Compact, please. Particularly as you mentioned, you asked the questions around who's got different commitments or practices in place from your universal principles. How can we drive the action? How can we flip the dial from commitment to action?
Yeah, definitely. So at the Global Compact, we of course think that ensuring a safe and healthy working environment is a fundamental part of decent work, and we are seeing companies take very innovative approaches to embed this into their operations and their supply chain practices. However, each year, according to the ILO, an estimated 2.78 million workers still die from occupational accidents and work-related diseases. So I think that this question now moving to action is really important to all discuss here today. And it's also been great to already hear from my fellow panelists on some of the actions that they're already seeing from companies. From the Global Compact 2, I talked a little bit already about our communication on progress and the data there. And we can also see from that data that 94% of participating companies report having some kind of an occupational health and safety policy in place, and over 80% have implemented related training programs. which is really great that companies are definitely taking action on this topic. And it's even better that a lot of the companies are now moving from beyond compliance to then adopting preventative and worker-centered approaches. So some of these approaches include, first of all, moving from focusing only on your own operations to also looking into your supply chain practices and using a due diligence system in place to identify where are the highest risk to workers, and first tackling issues based on workers' rights, and especially ensuring that they do have safe and healthy working environments. We do see also in our COP that there are a lot of policy commitments, especially on safe and healthy working environments for a company's own operations, but that there is a need to expand this a little bit more to include suppliers and broader value chains. We do have a resource that we developed together with the ILO. I'll also drop that in the chat that provides really practical steps. It's actually called 9 Business Practices for Improving Safety and Health in Your Supply Chains. So it just lays out in 9 clear steps how companies can look at improving safety and health within their supply chains, especially once they have their own operations in better order. And another really innovative way that we're seeing companies embed occupational safety and health and advanced decent work also in their supply chains is to embed human rights and labor standards into procurement policies and into different contracts. We see responsible contracting, the idea of the shared responsibility between buyers and suppliers to jointly work together for these sustainability goals and to advance decent work. And SDG 8 is really taking off and is a good way to work together on this topic. And then another way that we see companies taking action on this topic is to take more of an intersectional approach to ensure health and safety at work. So going beyond compliance to co-create safe workplaces through working also at the same time then on advancing gender equality, on paying living wages, on tackling child labor, etc., because these issues are all enablers to advancing each other as well. And we also wanted to flag that the upcoming World Social Summit taking place in November also presents another critical opportunity to reflect the need for stronger responsible business conduct and more actions from companies on decent work and SDG 8, and the opportunity to then build in this shared responsibility also between governments and the private sector as they both are working on advancing these SDGs, then they can work together to create the world envisioned by the SDGs in this joint action.
Fantastic. Thank you, Megan, and thanks for mentioning the supply chains, because I think it's important that, as you say, the organisation doesn't start and finish in their own physical boundary, that there is that entire value chain. And we also get asked of how you can support the occupational safety and health through supply chain, sustainable procurement strategies. What does that look like? And I've made a note of the document that you mentioned, your 9 business practices as well. So these kind of resources, they're really useful to help guide those who are interested in what they can do and the innovative solutions that they can pose. So that being said, I do have a few words to say at the end, but what I want to do now is we have got 5 minutes or so. If anybody's got any question, I've got one in the bank. It's waiting for me to ask it, but I just wanted to see if anybody's got a question that they'd like to raise their hand for any of the panelists or all of the panelists. Have you heard something you want to know a bit more? If not, I will ask my question. I'm not seeing any hands. I'm just checking. I've not been on Zoom like this for a little while, so I'm just flicking across. Right, let me get into my chat function then. So a question that was put through a little while ago in the Q&A was, it says, during times of crisis and economic downturn, young workers often bear the brunt of job losses and instability, yet they are frequently overlooked in discussions around the decent work agenda. Anna highlighted the limited engagement with trade unions as a key barrier to their protection. How can these workers be better protected? So I know, Anna, from the European Youth Forum, you were here pitching the voice of sort of young workers, but I'll open the floor to anybody want to answer this one? So how can these workers be better protected? if there's anything in addition or any other thoughts from any other speaker. Oh, Anna, I can get European Youth Forum, please.
Yeah, I can start with a quick answer to this question. I think it really comes down in I'm speaking from the European perspective. So in Europe, it really comes down to the legislation. At the moment, there is legislation going through the EU around protection of workers, and we really see that the EU is kind of failing young workers there. We're particularly working, for example, on banning unpaid internship. And because that is a huge barrier for young workers, especially from lower social backgrounds, who might just not be able to afford to work for free for 6 months. And that is a huge barrier then to enter the labour market. And there the EU can really do better in terms of protection of young workers, as a very concrete example.
Lovely, thank you. Does anybody else want to add to that from their perspective?
Right.
Oh,
Thank you.
Anna, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. So what I think is from Ayali is when there's a crisis going, or when there's a pandemic, or when there's a vulnerability, when the country is not good developed, is when there's a high risky of not obtaining decent work, and it's where we have to close our collaboration and strengthen our resources. So therefore, if there is a crisis by the economic, social, or whatever, is when there's more danger that the labor condition will not take place, that the decent work will not be warranted, and where the collaboration and where the work together is more than necessary. So when a company is doing okay and when they're all happy, as Anna told, we should not only focus about the physical risky, but also by the mental health, because 30% of the workers are actually suffering from mental health. So please, if the crisis is taking place, we should more put some alerts as some in our mobile phone, or when the climate change is saying to us that it's being a hazard and we should take action. So whenever a crisis or global pandemic or whatever is been taking place, there's more need to collaborate and more to take action and more to take care of it, because we might lose our labor conditions.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, for those reflections. Oh, Professor Song, over to you.
Yeah, in addition to the mental health, we should concentrate on non-communicable diseases. So the recently the WHO, the NCD picked up the 5 health outcome. One is the cardiovascular disease. Second one is the cancer and the respiratory disease, including the COPD, chronic obstructive lung disease, and diabetes and the mental health. So mental health is one of these. So a lot of the workers really in occupation condition influence these 5 the diseases. So health conditions relate to, as I told, in lifestyle, aging, social inequality. It is an impact on workforce. So it's really important for focusing on non-communicable disease, not only mental health. Also the ILO cannot do this alone. So ILO should work together within the WHO. So this is why the ICO call an action for ILO WHO Joint Committee on Occupational Health. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And yeah, thanks everybody for answering that question that's just come in. I know there's another question on the chat about how to improve health and safety culture. I mean, obviously from that perspective, I think there was a nice answer earlier about making sure that health and safety is embedded at the value stage. So for me, it's about making sure that, as well as having a robust health and safety management system where you've got your leadership commitment, you're following it through action. Leaders aren't just saying it, they've got role modeling, you've got worker participation, that consultation, feedback and engagement. It's just making sure that all those systems are in place. And we've talked a lot around different vulnerable groups as well. So building those inclusive cultures, giving everybody a voice, giving workers that voice. It's all important to help build that safety culture, but it needs to be at the heart of core business and at the value of that business. So it's there front and centre, and there is investment, resource and support, roles, responsibilities and accountabilities to help drive that. So I will do my closing remarks now in the view of finishing in the next sort of couple of minutes, I'd just like to thank every one of our speakers, as I say, for tuning into this one from different locations around the globe at different time zones, midway through commutes and travels home. So I really appreciate it on behalf of me and on behalf of IOSH. And colleagues have also mentioned different events that have been happening. So if you have been following some of our IOSH feeds, we've been talking about the Osaka event that Anna mentioned, with the expo that has been happening there, and the sessions that we've put on, joint sessions where we've had different speakers on different topics of good health and safety and that decent work agenda. Megan mentioned the high-level political forum that's happening at the moment. So again, IOSH has got our written statement within there. And you also mentioned the social summit, Megan, so thank you. We're hoping to get a bit of an IOSH presence there at that one as well in November in Qatar. So just to summarise then, the speakers have added so many great insights, contributions, thoughts, food for action to drive this agenda forward. I just wanted to conclude with a couple of the stats, which I know some speakers have mentioned. We know that 2.93 million workers still die through work-related factors, millions more injured, impacted through the work that they do. We know that 50 million people, with women and children, remain disproportionately vulnerable and are living in modern day slavery. So we've got different estimates. So we know there is precarious work. We know informality is on the rise. We know gig work's on the rise. Anna mentioned climate change. There are lots of different mega factors that are going on that we need to consider. So in summary of everything that we've talked about, just to conclude, I think there does need to be that continued engagement and effort of all of us in that room and across civil society actors. So we've all got that role to play. I think Professor Siongi mentioned that collaboration piece, doing that bit. So we've got to collaborate. We need some of this evidence to help drive evidence-led solutions. We all should be supporting the implementation of that the decent work related UN instruments. I also think global supply chains play a key role in this. So how do we support embedding that sort of decent work and good health and safety standards through the supply chain? How do we promote the UN guiding principles on business and human rights in everything that we do? And obviously promoting a fundamental principle and right of work of health and safety work and environments. I think if we lead with all these in the heart of what we're doing, continue to come together, collaborate and promote, and like the informality piece that you mentioned, Anna, from IALI's perspective, I think it's key. We've got billions of workers in that area. So where can we make that effort and drive this agenda? So thank you, everybody, for listening. I will close now. Thank you to my speakers. Thanks for you attending, and thanks for you who will be watching back. I'll close it now. Thank you. Take care, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. See
Thank
you
you.
next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.